Hi everyone, we're going to be continuing talking about factor by grouping, and this is going to be our second video. So if we look at this one, we can tell it's different from our first video because in this one we've got, it looks a little bit different, and let's go through this. I'm trying to adjust the camera so the reflection isn't bad. Okay, so we have m squared plus 8mn minus 3mn minus 24n squared. So what is different about this one in this video is that we've got some negatives, okay? And I just want to show us how we're going to handle these, okay? So anytime we are factoring, and we're doing factor by grouping because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, we are going to look for a GCF. I do not see a GCF that all of these have in common. Like I know that these three, have an M, but this one does not have an M. These three have an N, but this one doesn't have an N, okay? So when we look for that GCF or that greatest common factor, we need to make sure it applies to all 4 terms, okay? This one does not have a GCF. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start breaking them and grouping them together, breaking them into 2 pieces. So we're going to write m squared plus 8mn here. And then we're going to take this piece right here, and we're going to take the sign, okay? If you see a negative in front of it, take that negative. 3mn minus 24n squared, okay? Now that we've broken them down into 2 pieces, let's go ahead and factor, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and draw my ladder. Now, what do these both have in common? These two, just looking at these two, this one has an M and this one has an M. So this one has the coefficient of an 8 and this one has an N, but this one does not have either of these two. So we're not pulling out those. So we're going to go ahead and pull out our M. Let's look at the one with the smallest exponent. Scoot this over. The one with the smallest exponent. So this one's m squared, and this would essentially be m to the first. So we're only going to pull out that one m, okay? So m squared divided by m is m, because 2 minus 1, looking at our exponents, would just be 1, so m to the first, plus, we didn't do anything to our 8, so we're going to leave our 8. M divided by m cancels out, so we don't write anything. We're already taking that m out, and we didn't do anything to our n, so we're going to leave our n. And that's all we can do with this. We can't break it down anymore. Let's go ahead and look at this piece here. So we have negative 3mn minus 24n squared. Let's go ahead and draw my ladder. The first thing I notice about this one is I see this negative right here. When I see a negative in the front, I want to go ahead and pull that negative out. Because when we start dividing, it's going to change all the signs. So this first one is not going to be negative, okay? Now, let's look at our coefficients. 3 and 24. 3 and 24. What number can go into both 3 and 24? The greatest common factor? It would be 3, okay? Because 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 24 divided by 3 is 8. Now let's look at our variables attached to it. This one has an M. This one does not have an M, so we're leaving it. This one has an N, and this one has an N, okay? So we're going to be pulling out an N. Which one has the smallest exponent? This one, because it's essentially n to the first, okay? So that's why we're pulling out just one n. All right, let's start dividing. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is going to be a positive 1. And I just want to go ahead and, for anything down here, I'll just do my imaginary 1. We didn't do anything to our m, so we're bringing our m down. n divided by n cancels out. Our n divided by n. And remember, if we want to understand this, n divided by n equals 1, okay? Because we're essentially pulling that piece out. So negative 24 divided by negative 3 is going to be positive 8, okay? Because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. N squared divided by n, remember, we subtract our exponent, so 2 minus 1 would leave you just with an n, and we'd have an imaginary 1. And that's all we can do for this one. And if we look at these two, they are the same because this one would essentially have that imaginary 1 here. So these two do match, so we are on, I'm going to write over this, we are on the right track. So let's go ahead and write our final answer. So our final answer, we need to make sure we have this m here. So m minus 3n. These two on the outside that we've pulled out go together. So m minus 3n because we pulled out the negative times, and then we just write this once, m plus 8n. And that is your answer. All right, let's go ahead and look at a second example. So for this one, we have 6x squared plus 9xy minus 14x minus 21y. Okay, do we have a GCF in all four of them? No, we don't. So like 6, 9, and 21, I would say, okay, 3 would go into those 3, but it doesn't go into 14. So no, this one has an x, and an x, but this one doesn't have an x. So there's no GCF. But we always should just look for it, okay? But we should just get in the habit. All right, so let's start grouping them. We're going to put these two together. So we're going to say 6x squared plus 9xy. And we're going to put these two together, and don't forget that negative. Negative 14x minus 21y. And let's go ahead and draw in our ladders. Okay? We're going to do our ladder here. Now, let's look at our coefficients. Think division. What is our GCF for 6 and 9? What number can go into both 6 and 9? 3. Because 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Now, so we looked at our coefficients. What else do they have in common? This one has an x, and this one has an x. So we're going to pull out an x. Which one has the smallest exponent? This one with the imaginary 1. So we're just going to leave it as the same x, because this is the smallest one. So we're going to keep this x. And this one has a y. Okay? We're leaving it. This one does not have a y, so we have to leave it. So let's get dividing. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X squared divided by x, remember 2 minus 1, we're going to have an x because we're essentially pulling out one of those x's. Plus 9 divided by 3 is 3. X divided by x cancels out because they're the same. They cancel out, and we're going to keep our y. And it looks like there is nothing else that we can pull out of this. Okay, let's move on to our second one. Drawing in our ladder. Oh, I see a negative here. Oh no, so I'm going to pull out my negative right there. I'm just going to hold it out there because I don't like negatives in the front here, so it's coming right out. Just get rid of it. Okay, so let's look at our coefficients, 14 and 21. What number can go into both 14 and 21? Think about it. It would be 7. Okay, 7's the number. All right. So this one has an x and this one has a y. They're different, so we leave them. You know, they're not the same. They don't share it, so we're leaving them. Okay. So let's go ahead and get dividing. Negative 14 divided by negative 7 is a positive 2. Bring down our x. Negative 21 divided by negative 7 is a positive 3, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and we're going to keep our y. And there's nothing else we can do here, but look, they match. This matches this one. They match perfect. So now let's go ahead and write our final answer, okay? So we have 3x minus 7. So we're going to say 3x minus 7. And then we're going to write this once because they match, so we need to only write it once. 2x plus 3y. And that is the answer. All right, let's look at one last one quickly because I don't want this video to be too long where I'm unable to upload it. So let's try and get through this one, okay? I can see here that this one is 5xy minus 8x minus 10y plus 16, okay? So I can tell you right now, there is no GCF. I'm looking for my GCF. There is not a GCF. So I'm going to go ahead and start breaking this down. So I have 5xy minus 8x. Then I've got this piece here, negative 10y plus 16. Okay, so now I am going to go ahead and start pulling things out. Now looking at our coefficients, 5 and negative 8. They have nothing in common, so I do see that this x is here and this x is here, so I'm going to pull out an x. This one has a y, but this one does not, so we're leaving it. So we're not messing with our 5. X divided by x cancels out. We're leaving our y alone because we didn't pull it out. Minus, we're not dealing with our 8, and x divided by x is also canceling out. And now we're left with 5y minus 8. Okay? Now for this one, I do see this negative right off the bat, so I'm going to pull out that negative. What is, looking at our coefficients, do we have a number that can go into both 10 and 16? We do. It is, let's go ahead and say 2, okay? Now, this one has a y, this one does not, so we just leave the y. So negative 10 divided by negative 2 is going to be a positive 5, and then we're going to pull down our y. And 16 divided by negative 2, so a positive divided by a negative makes a negative, and 16 divided by 2 is 8. So I can see here that, yay, these two match. So I did it right. And now I'm going to go ahead and write my final answer. Don't forget about these over here. And they get paired together. So I'm going to say it's x minus 2, x minus 2. And these two are 5y minus 8. We put those here. And that is your final answer.